Well, at the very beginning of, let's say, career or whatever, I was so impressed in a certain sense, parallel with the film media, with video, but in the same time with the early avant-garde movements, artists from 20s and 30s, and from related to that with the pioneers of, let's say, experimental film. And the fact that it was interesting situation that a lot of painters and visual artists used that new medium in that period and that historical age shows me kind of certain possibility how to combine, how to use film and video in some by other means, in some sense, in a different way of articulation of intentions, of concepts, of visualization. After all, let's say key moment for this interest of mine was the death of the Louis Buñuel, and the fact that on the, I think, TV Belgrade, it was like a movie edition, like a TV show, which was, and they present in 1983, so I was like less than 16. I watched Un Chien Andalou, and that was a really kind of the film which completely turns my interest in some other aspects of filming. And later on, I didn't attend in high school. We had this Center for Arts and Culture, which was like a substitute for the gymnasium in a socialist period. So I didn't attend the film class, but I went to a cinema club, and that was when I was like 17, 18. It was like a kind of the ambient. It was not so propulsive as nowadays. It was not so active as nowadays. But that tradition, which is related to Jean Film Festival, Michael Pansini, Petek, Tom Gotovac, all that scene and that kind of experimental films, it shows me in a certain sense the way in which I would like to go. And I had in that when I was quite young, I had the contacts with Dalibor Martinis and Sanja Vekovic and this like generation which were pioneers of the video art. And later on, I attend with not so big success Academy of the Drama Arts in Zagreb for 3 years, and I spent 1 year with, which was very important for me in that formative period on the Prix Academy in Den Haag, where the professor was very famous Dutch artist and filmmaker Frans Varches. So that was all the like a kind of early and important period for me. And in the Holland, I succeeded to have a production with Montevideo and Canal Zero in 1992. I spent that 3 years on the Academy for film and TV directing, but what was quite interesting for me was the fact that I had very good relation with the guy which works as a technician in the TV studio, and there I succeeded to try something those were a kind of a first steps which connects me with the TV technology, all the possibilities which were very rough, which were very, if you compare with the nowadays options of technology, that was really like U-matic and all these old formats, which was the characteristics of that was that it's very fragile, not only image but the whole procedure how you can create some works. So I remember from that period that we were fighting with the fact that, for example, when there was not enough light, it was very fragile, you know, 3 cathode cameras with 3 cathode tubes. So everything, the video needed a lot of light, a lot of kind of professional studio conditions. It was completely unimaginable to record or to shoot in, for example, what we are dealing now, like you are recording me with the 4K standard on a mobile phone, no? And that the video image nowadays is based upon certain algorithms. So analog technology is, in a sense, interesting, but in a sense, for me, honestly speaking, it was a kind of a frustrating situation in which I felt that it is quite limited, I had the reference, for example. What was very important for me was the period in which BBC establishes Channel 4 and, for example, works by David Larcher or works by Stein and Vasulka. So, you know, they worked, they had a possibility to use the really kind of professional equipment, or not maybe professional, but they had, for them the equipment was available for a longer period of time. And for us here, and even, you know, the situation that in 70s, all those works which are like marks, which are very important works for not only Croatian scene, but European, were done by Croatian artists, by Trbuljak, Martinis and Sanja. They did all those works actually in the context of Italian gallery in the 70s. Honestly speaking, we had the problem how to have the access to kind of semi-professional, professional equipment, because it is interesting how the aesthetics of early period is based. The aesthetics are based directly with the fact and some technological aspects of. So on a very formal scale, you have the situation in which you are operating with a certain technology which generates like you can create something which is in a certain sense defined by technology. You cannot go in something which you cannot do without the technology. So when the technology is limited, you have the situation that it generates all the concepts and aesthetics, and luckily, you know, like the very essence of conceptual art and this kind of minimal elementary type of art corresponds with that fact that this fragile, very limited technology at the very beginning was properly used by the artist. So, but in the 90s, I remember one situation in the cinema club where I create one 6 minutes film. It was called In the Color Box, and after when Drago Doppler in a laboratory he develops the Unker material, so that's 16 millimeter, only one copy, so it's almost like a painting, like it is in a way interesting, like that there is no copy of that film. It is only one roll, one film, like 6 minutes. I don't know in meters, but it's approximately, I don't know, 70 meters, something like that. So I had that film transferred into video, and I remember the moment in which in the cinema club appears one very basic technologically basic equipment which creates one effect. So I create kind of a remix from that film, 16 millimeter film, which goes like it was actually a video delay kind of. So the film was called In the Color Box, and it runs in the middle of the screen, but you have like 9 screens all around, and the images were very fast, so the rhythm was like this. And it was for me like a first time that I succeed to combine like a film and video and this kind of analog film and analog video, and I don't know if I have some stills, but on the Vimeo I have this only film copy. But it's interesting, like how can video can make a kind of upgrade, or how the aesthetics can be redefined in a way. Huh? So this work, which is called In the Color Box, the relation is the reference. For me, it was Len Lai film from 1935, and the fact that Len Lai worked, he works a lot of like commercials on 35 millimeters, like animated for some kind of like a period in which there was a virginity of promotion, of marketing. Like before Second World War, you know, it was something completely different. But in this film, I tried to, basic concept was related with Erich Fromm and the fact of the, you know, like the fact like related with oversaturated society, with needs which are not important for the people, but the strategies of the convincing people like to buy more and more goods. So the funny and interesting aspect of that, it was that we used like a Bolek 16 millimeter film, and we walk around the Zagreb in the end of the socialism, and it was really hard to find billboards, all these kind of light boxes, you know, which we are nowadays we can see them in enormous aspects. Trams are full of commercials and stuff like that. And after all, we use like something from the newspapers and the magazines from the West. So we use like a kind of stop motion animation. And the relation, what is interesting, like that material, I use some interventions on 16 millimeter material, direct interventions, which looks like this. So it was a very kind of rough interventions on the material. So And later on, I put like this film material in the video effect, which creates like this kind of color box. So it was like a kind of a small film video, multi-layered, kind of, well, it has a certain engagement against this kind of what was coming, and it was like this kind of society of spectacle, let's say, and all this consumerism, what we are facing nowadays. Well, this is the intervention on, so it's kind of a multi-layered, so it is a kind of collage which is recorded, and then intervention which is, I use like kind of Pantone. It is a type of the for coloring for comic books actually, and it's interesting how for all these years when we took it from the archives before a couple of years, this color still it's quite in a good condition. So it's interesting like that it doesn't disappear. Pantone was legendary flowmaster. I don't know, it's the word for for painting for a professional comic book drawers, artists. Well, in the 90s and especially during war period, it was there was no any kind of financing. Well, it was. I think that from the Ministry of Culture, it was like a sponsorship. Eventually, I know that Galeta create one film, but it was not so organized as nowadays when we have this Croatian Audiovisual Center. And we had in the 90s certain production, but it was really completely kind of underground position, because we used to work during the nights after some professional jobs, what we did in the editing room. So I used like some professional equipment, like video generators, Pinnacle Systems, Grass Valley Group, this kind of professional equipment, but we use like small formats, like Super VHS. It was the period in which we used like masters for videos, Betacam SP, later on digital Betacam. But it was that work during the night, it was really kind of you felt kind of squeezed, and there was not so enough time for experimenting, for trying how some processes behave. And in that period I create only, I think, 2 or 3 videos, so till 2000, when it was established. We were lucky that in 2000 it was established that kind of financing of experimental film and video. And nowadays it's really kind of very good condition if you compare with the countries in the neighborhood. Luckily we have this kind of a tradition of the short forms of video art, of successful animated films, and that all is a kind of a tradition which cannot be ignored. So hopefully we have nowadays we have a possibility to expect at least some money for the production of this kind of weird non-linear films and videos. Now, from my point of view, nowadays is very hard to speak like a film, video, and this kind of. It's hard to say like about the diversity. It was very actual in the 90s, like that diversification, because it was a kind of a transitional period, and it was a lot of talks and discussions and theses about what's the authenticity of the film, what is the authenticity of video, how one medium affects other. This extremely slow, little production of younger people. So we present in the context of the project Reference to Difference, which was supported by the Soros Institute in 1996. And we create one compilation of 6-7 artists, and that was a program which was presented in I think in Germany, even in Russia, in Slovenia, in Croatia, Italy, I think in UK. I'm not sure now, it passed almost 30 years from now, but I was a kind of I don't know, like self-organized. We were like a self-organized artists. Actually, I was kind of not curator, but more like organizer, like the person which organized all that, like in a sense of presentation and technical and mastering of this. So nowadays Janka Vukmir holds that as a master Betacam SP tape, and it was presented 2 or 3 times in Berlin on Interfilm Festival and Neuberliner Kunstverein, which was quite interesting how one part of the program was like a 45-50 minutes of video works, but there were like a smaller part of video clips which were aired on the MTV in 1993, 94, 95. And it was kind of controversial and interesting situation how the people, for example, in Berlin reacts on the fact that somebody but artists cannot work for MTV. Why is that? That was a kind of almost a political consternation, kind of embarrassing situation. And one very nice woman, which is called Mona Moore, he was defending us, saying, yeah, but you don't understand their context, how the what kind of specifics of the context, country in the war, a country which is not associated and incorporated in the West. The position of the artist is completely different. So, I hope that even in these video clips, what we did it was related with the techno music and this kind of quite popular even nowadays, but it's nowadays it's completely stupid. At the very beginning, it has some interesting aspects. And it was a kind of underground. Nowadays it's pure business and stupidity, 99% of that scene. But we created quite highly creative musical videos, and it was aired on the MTV Europe, announced by Steve Blame and all these kind of celebrities. For almost 50 times. We had one video clip which we did really under a really extremely limited scale of production, to 8 hours editing, and on Amiga computers, like which was like really kind of entry level, but very very good, which shows like a kind of a that what was today normal, what is today normal, like to produce at home films. It was quite hard to create in that circumstances, in that period. And I remember one interesting fact that, for example, one sequence of 4 seconds, like dolphins kind of moving through some underwater tube. It was very basic, but it was rendered for 40 days on Amiga 4000. So it's incredible how it was slow, and how much effort you got to have to create something interesting. And after all these kind of loops and stuff, like we use like some softwares from Amiga, like Brilliance, Deep-Paint, for that kind of archaic nowadays. But later on, we used this. We worked with Dubravko Slunski, the editor, and in post-production we use like more layers in with video effects and this professional ambient of for editing. So we create quite interesting and creative video clips, musical video clips. But in the same time, nowadays it looks completely archaic. Nowadays it looks like from like 50 years ago. So it's so incredible, like how that kind of exponential growth of the technological possibilities and development of the machines, you know, from certain sense and from certain point of view, we should be afraid of that. Because we are now facing from that what I mentioned till today, in the situation in which we have the fact that AI can create like something just like that. It is really kind of the very beginning of it, but it is quite significant that in next decade we can expect like almost the situation in which there is no need for the artistic point of view and the concepts what we know, but in the same time we have to see like what are the new possibilities, what are the new positions, and how can we cooperate with the machines. I don't know. Related to phase of the video production of the musical video clips, one thing is interesting related with 3D sequences. And the fact that the sequence, if you wanted to have it in a flow, you had to use like Amiga 4000 computer, Impact Vision kind of graphic card controller, and Betacam SP magnetoscope, old machine. And for each frame, you should put like one frame, then on the magnetoscope it goes like backwards, like 10 seconds of pre-roll, so it runs backwards, and then the light record appears, and that was like only one frame. So for 1 second you had to do it 25 times, like this pre-roll, then top, so to have like 1 second of 25 frames. So it was quite painful and very long period, like to have any kind of 3D sequence. For nowadays, for today's conditions, It's completely unimaginable. So this is the example how we use like a basic 3D animation, this sphere on which is applied a kind of brush like for the texture, but later on we use like a video generator and the closed circuit of the video signal, and which creates this kind of smooth and different type of image. So it is the, for example, it is the example of the combination of computer image and video effects and generators of the from the mid of 90s. Well, it was quite interesting that during the COVID period we create one completely animated 3D film, which is pretty much conceptually related with the fact of the new philosophy and new organisms, and the fact that we as a civilization are facing kind of processes in which we have to be prepared for communication and life with non-organic, non-biological and non-human entities. That film was called Aqualia, and what is interesting moment, it is pretty much narrative. It has a kind of storyline, but there are no words. It's just ambient sound. I did it with my friend Hrvoje Pelicarić on electronic soundscapes, which are for 12 minutes in that film. And the other 8 minutes we create with conductor Tomislav Facini and his antiphonous ensemble with the vocalization, which creates a kind of a little dark, emotional scene in which you have diver get killed from the underwater robot. But beside that, beside all those facts and the impressive work of my main animator Boris Goreta, there is one interesting situation, what we were facing at the very end of the production, creating a digital cinema package, which is like, as you know, nowadays professional standard for the presenting films in the cinema. During that, so within the film we have a moment in which a biological entity of unknown origin affects like underwater machine, and it creates glitches. So those glitches appears as a statical imagery in the film. When we try to create DCP, glitches from the film, which are like in the function, they look like this sequence. So this, what we created as statical category, affects a process of coding of this DCP. So DCP interprets our aesthetical situation as a glitch on a formal technological level of creating a package for screening. So we should recreate a little bit this and put a much higher, almost on full bitrate. So the whole file gets at least 30% more gigabytes. and in that condition, we succeed to create a DCP like we wanted to look like. Because the DCP creates kind of upgrades, kind of different colors, and so that software creates actually on autonomous level from glitch input his own glitches, which looks terrible, and we didn't want it looks completely different than this, which is kind of aesthetics. Like it was designed as a glitch. It is not only a glitch, it was designed to be exactly like this. That's a kind of interesting episode in production of this film, which is called Aqualia. This is actually a film document paracosmic, which is related with the fact that the people, the scientists who took the Nobel Award in 2018, so that was the year in which, in a way, I didn't know, I didn't have a lot of information about that, but what was intriguing for me, it was that they found a proof for a thesis by Albert Einstein from 1910 of the appearance of possible unknown dimension on a very small scale, on a microscopic level, that it's possible to have like an insight into that parallel dimension. So it is related with a quite a complex physical theory, and I was interested to incorporate this kind of a small scale within the architecture. So I took like a lot of visuals from, let's say, it's not here so important, but it can be related with kind of term of Marc Auger non-place, like a kind of a place which is universal architecture, which you can find anywhere around the globe. Like this kind of visuals can be in Europe, States, Northern Australia, whatever. So the idea was that these kind of activities from that certain unknown dimension appears in empty spaces in which there is no current activity of the people. And I finished that film in 2019, exactly 1 year, because when the COVID appears. So all these empty spaces were quite embarrassing announcement of what happened later, because as you can see, these kind of objects are completely unknown, in a sense unrecognizable, and that can be interpreted from this kind of distance of few years, kind of quite compatible with the social and global social situation later on. It's not, it's conceptually it's related with these questions related with the gravitational theory. But it's we used objects are animated within the static photography, and what is quite interesting is that there are, I found it later, there are certain similarities from this with scientific visualization related to that theory. I can show some example because I found like one or two visualizations from the data, but I didn't know that. So it is interesting how the energies from the completely different context, like artistic, because what I'm interested in is that I combine this kind of scientific data, which is quite edgy, and from physics and theoretical physics. It's really like so edgy from the Heisenberg period that it really kind of opens kind of a field and potential compatibility with artistic intentions. Before 15 years, it was quite popular in the industry, like film industry initiate like the appearance of 3D stereoscopic. They reactualize that because in a few decades, in the 50s, film industry tries to establish like a 3D as a kind of a propulsive technology, and they expect that they can earn more money. At the beginning of 21st century, they tried to bring back people into the cinema using the 3D stereoscopic technology. But what was interesting for me was this kind of a semi-immersive aspect and the expansion of film medium. And honestly speaking, I think that stereoscopic 3D films are primarily for the experimentation. When you see like conventional films in cinema, it is almost stupid because it is effective only in certain situations like explosions, like but when you have, for example, dialogue situations, you have like an elbow of some guy which is like in front of you, so it's completely different type of filming. And some people from Far East, from Hong Kong's professional cinema context, when they shoot with two cameras with for stereoscopy, for them it was all the experiences they had, it was a kind of problematic because it is very hard to direct 3D if you compare with the conventional cinema, because it's completely kind of a different logic. What I did here, I think that I'm the only author which used that technique. I create 3 films with my colleague Mario Calogera, who is who was able to technically create this kind of visuals, and I never succeed to use like cameras and the professional facility of that. So we create like these 3 stereoscopic films from the photography and from the fact that we use the medium on a very specific way. And the first film, what we did was Arhcheo 29. It was from 2010, and we used like some kind of a primitive shadow theater combined with the aesthetic of collage. And the whole concept was that I used like visuals from original magazines from 1929, from Časopis Svijet, which was a kind of a substitute for television, and it was full of photographs. So I found in a family context this kind of material, and I use it like very primitive kind of camera or obscura. Well, I put like a backlight and 2 pages, so I did like a photography, like a collage type of photography. And later on in the digital processing, we cut this kind of collage and we put it in 3 or 4 plans. So we had this kind of small movements, which looks like very interesting in cinema as a stereoscopic projection. So it is the whole kind of media work. Starting point was printed paper photography. In this paper there was a lot of wood, so the texture was very specific. Then digital photography, treated as a collage. After that, this kind of stereoscopy procedure. And what is interesting is when you compare like a 35mm copy of the film and 3D, it's like a completely different film. It's the completely same film, formally, all shots are the same, but 35mm copy has this kind of very nice, like a paper, very haptic aspect of film picture. And this 3D is now like entering into kind of a new space. Later on, with aerial photography, I did one concept which is related with, it is kind of sci-fi storytelling. I use my friends from Britain and Willem from California, which lives in Zagreb. And it is a story which was related with Rosetta and ESA protocols and successful landing on the asteroid. And it is, again, quite interesting that I had this kind of story before I had the information about this scientific project. And it was, we create like a kind of a situation that you have like a radio drama on the, in the off, so you have through the dialogues like operators of a transnational company tries to establish the contact with the piece, with the gadget which falls from the asteroid on Earth, but how he flights over the some empty spaces on Earth. We use like photography from the PAG. We did with Cessna, like it was the period before drone, before this kind of inflationary usage of drone footage. So we really used like a Cessna, you know, we did photography over Rijeka, PAG, on some interesting locations. And later, the whole image is a kind of holographic view or certain point of view from the operators. And well, in this, it is quite strange and interesting how the stereoscopy works in that sense. There are not so many moves within picture, but we use like high-res photography, so we were able to enter into the photography and create this kind of simulation of the space. So that was quite interesting and very specific way of creating a stereoscopic point of view. So just usage of 3D objects, moves within photography, photography as itself, and these interesting games with the parallax, with that specific view. So stereoscopic films are much more, much better for conceptual thing, for conceptual films, for experimenting with the film medium than for the conventional type of filming. That's definitely what I can say. Evo, Bill Viola Works, kužiš, na primjer. Tu imam DVD-ove koji su mi bili važni. Buffalo Heads, on mi je poklonio Peter Weibel. Kad smo bili na snimanju novih tendencija. Onda je rekao kao, evo imam jedan poklon za tebe. Ja sam zaboravio mu reći da mi se potpiše. I tako, gore navedeni ovoga, vidiš, kao jedan od omiljenih režisera. Ili Tarkovski Polaroidi. To je isto divno, lijepo i poetično. I tako. Ili knjiga koju sam kupio u antikvarijatu i vidio da je potpisana sa Hrvoje Turković. I onda mi je Turković rekao da je on to prodao zato što je on kupio novo izdanje. A meni je dopalo u ruke ovo ovak ščohana. Ali bitno je kaj nutra. I ono kaj smo svjedočili nedavno, evo jedan Namjoon Paik, Global Groove, jedan ovako katalog, koji je full interesantan i tak. Ono, evo, pomalo. To je, ovo mi je Bruce Posner poklonio. On je autor ove velikog izdanja, eksperimentalni film iz 896. do 45. I onda smo malo pričali, on je rekao, kaže, aha, imam tu samo još dvije, ali jedna mora biti za tebe. I onda mi je dao Unseen Cinema. To je jedno izdanje, ovako, vrlo specifično. Ja mislim da ima oko 400 eksperimentalnih filmova američkih, raznih, ono, iz tog celog ranog perioda. I moj dragi profesor, evo ga, Franz Varčes, moj dragi profesor koji je bio već star kad smo mi došli na tu akademiju. To je bilo u Den Haagu, ne? I to je to. I da spremim Japan na kojem je stajao na kojem je stajala naša kamera, ova, za ovo. I na ovom isto je stajala kamera. Ovo je jedna opasna knjiga. Evo tu stoji pored Okulta, Okult i Book of the Symbols. I za kraj jedan naš stari katalog, dakle poznati Reference to Difference, to je dizajnirao Igor Kuduz.